Tell me who rock, who sell out in the stores. You tell me who flop, who cop the blue drop, who do it.
What up, Panther Nation? It's me, the freaking Puerto Rican, aka Big Tasty, in the house, live from the low country of South Carolina. I'm here with some of my favorite people tonight. We've got the professor, touchdown Tony Dunn. What's happening, Tony? Say hello. All right.
What's up, guys? I can barely hear you. I don't know what's going on. So go ahead and carry on and introduce yourself.
Okay. We've got Aaron Melmayock Ford here with us. Say hello, Aaron.
Hey, Panther Nation. Looking forward to some good discussion with our friends over on the other coast tonight.
And our very special guest this evening, Mr. Peter Panacy of Bleacher Report. Peter, it's great to have you on the show. Say hello to Panther Nation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And what's up, Panther Nation? Happy to talk some 49ers and Panthers football with y'all.
Okay, finally I can hear now, guys. If you can see me now. What we're here tonight to talk about is a little contracts. We've been interested in following the San Francisco 49ers. Strangely, our stories always converge with this organization somehow. And we've been watching this closely to talk about the contract of Colin Kaepernick and how it may affect Cam Newton and other quarterbacks in the league. Joey, has this contract been something that has been of interest to you?
Oh yeah, I think it's very interesting to all the teams that have young quarterbacks who have they're coming up on their contract renewals. It's really teams really going to look at this contract closely to see where they're going to go with their direction of their quarterbacks. In particular, Cam Newton, as far as we're concerned, what kind of deal he's looking at getting.
Okay, and this is the reason we brought Peter on tonight. Peter, thanks for coming on. Could you tell us a little bit about this contract?
Well, basically, it's chalked up to being worth up to $126 million, with $61 million guaranteed. But there are a lot of little tidbits and stipends in there that can essentially change everything about the contract. For 2014. There's really not too much difference. It really starts kicking in 2015, where the base salary is just over $12 million, and the base salaries increase slightly all the way up through 2020. But there's a lot of different escalators and de-escalators that are kind of all throughout the deal. It's not quite like an incentive, which becomes earned when you meet certain conditions or requirements or whatever. Instead, there's all these different types of things that kind of go into it, and I could go on forever about it, but it does wind up being pretty team-friendly for the 49ers when you stop and look at it in the long run.
Right. It seems that they're. Go ahead. I was going to say that you were saying earlier, Peter, that throughout the life of the contract, there are times where if he is not meeting certain, I guess he's not living up to his reputation, or he's not meeting a certain level of production, the team can let him go.
Yeah, and you see a lot of these handicap deals that are really handcuffing a team, and the 49ers essentially have a luxury at almost any point throughout the contract to let him go. If he is picked up if he's playing to the caliber that I think obviously everybody in San Francisco wants him to play at, it winds up being a great deal. But if not, 49ers really don't take a big gamble on him. They'll be able to let him go at any point.
Right, they're not locked into him
right.
to try to get him to play better. If he's not doing the job at any point, they can just let him go and look for someone else. I think that's the big thing. Isn't that the I guess the thing that a lot of teams are looking at that's sort of new with this contract, I guess?
Yeah, I think so. You look at some of the deals of years past that have really handcuffed teams, and it's one thing if he was an elite, established quarterback, and as talented as he is, he's not quite at that tier. So the 49ers essentially have added the insurance of knowing that he is under their control through 2020 as long as they want to keep him. But if he regresses or fails to develop in the sense that they want him to, they're not bound to him essentially financially for a long period of time. Or if they were to cut him with a lot of money left on the table, it's not going to hinder them down the road.
Right.
I want to get in here and ask this, and I'm going to ask Aaron this first, and then we'll turn it to Peter. Is this funny money deal? Why even sign a deal like this? Essentially, this is just a non-guaranteed contract. Aaron, what do you think about this? Is this the demise of the one thing that NFL players have going for them in contract negotiations?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I think that's what the owners and GMs are hoping, right, is kind of setting the new trend for the new way of getting contracts done. And with the new collective bargaining agreement, maybe this is. Maybe it's more, you get paid for what you do. But let's don't forget, guys, the guy's getting a check for $12 million up front, still getting a ton of money. He's set for life. Now, what I think is interesting is, he was a roommate of Cam Newton's at the Combine.
Right.
And they came in at the same time. I find it interesting that Kaepernick's getting the deal a year before it looks like Cam is. Because it looks like right now Panthers are taking their time in the conversations, probably letting the ramifications play itself out with this contract.
Well, there is one thing to consider, too, with this, is that the 49ers didn't have a fifth-year option on Colin Kaepernick because he was a second-round draft pick, I believe, like early second. Peter, tell me, is this funny? Is this the new style of contract? And how bad do you think this is bad for the NFL? And why did Kaepernick sign this thing?
Well, I think it could be a trend for young players signing their first big deal, not their first 4-year or with plus fifth-year option or whatever. If you're signing your first big deal, I could see it being a trend that way. We saw a number of years ago when rookies were, especially first round, high, top 5 draft picks were getting gargantuan contracts. Sam Bradford comes to mind. And that went away. And you're thinking, okay, well, under the current bargaining agreement, why would you want to do that? And I think that this could be a trend in that direction. But like we were talking before, I think if you're an established player with a good amount of years under your belt, I think you probably steer clear from this. So I don't know in terms of good for the NFL, bad for the NFL. I could definitely see it being maybe like a certain stipend on how long you've been in the league for, but it's hard to say. I mean, this is kind of we're kind of treading new waters right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how the ramifications fall out.
Hey, Peter, do you think the issues down in Florida that Kaepernick may have had, do you think that was used by the 49ers in the negotiations at all?
Yeah, I think they were, but I don't think they were a huge influence on it. I think it was kind of like, right before all that stuff in Miami happened, there was a bunch of talk about Kaepernick's extension, when's it going to happen? And suddenly all that took place, and I think that gave the 49ers leverage to just say, we don't need to address this right now. Let's let all this calm down, cool off a bit. And it's kind of like when you're asked to make a big decision, and then they say, well, sleep on it. And I think that's kind of what the 49ers were able to do. So I don't think it just pushed it out a little bit more, nothing more than that.
Is this essentially, when you break it down beyond the guaranteed money up front, the money he gets, I guess, for signing the deal, is this pay for play?
A lot of the contract is. I mean, there's certain points where he has to be on the field for 80% of offensive snaps. That's part of it. And there's escalators that can get him money for making first team or second team All-Pro, winning an NFC Championship game, and playing in 80% of each postseason game, and so there's a lot of escalators that can influence this. So in a way, a lot of it is kind of pay to play. which, like we were talking about a little bit ago, could be kind of the new breed of contracts for players at this level at the NFL.
Okay, and Joe, I want you to consider this, and then we'll kind of pass the mic around, is with Colin Kaepernick, why did he agree to the extra years? Why didn't he just sign is he going to get in the third and fourth year, if he's, I guess, playing well, will he have the leverage, or will the 49ers have the leverage, Joey? And why do you go into those extended years with this risk involved? Because I don't know if you want to hang on to this contract in your third year if you're doing well. So where do you think he's going to be, Joey, in, say, 2 years, or the third year, if he's in a pretty good spot? He's not a super elite quarterback, but he's not a bum either.
I think
Who's holding that card?
I would say he is. I think if he's not an elite top tier quarterback, but if he is playing well and winning, I think he's making out. I think if he's making the postseason, he's making good enough money to where he'll be content, I think. It's where if he's won in the next 2 years, if he's won a Super Bowl and made it to another NFC Championship game, and he has become, Aaron Rodgers / Tom Brady-esque.
No way.
I'm just saying, if he has progressed to that point, then maybe the contract that he's looking at, he's thinking, wow, maybe I need to start looking to renegotiate. I don't see him getting to that point, but we don't know what could happen developmentally. Maybe the light bulb will go off, and who knows?
Okay, Peter, what do you think about that? In year 3, is he going to regret this? Is he going to be in a good position? And how does he leverage the 49ers to give him a more stable deal, maybe, for the back end of his career?
Well, I think kind of the big thing right now, if you're looking at it from Kaepernick's perspective, simple. You're making a lot more money now than you were last year.
A lot more.
You see all those dollar bills, and you're like, hey, I'll take it. That's fine. 3 years from now, a lot of it's going to depend on a lot of the escalators and de-escalators that I keep talking about. A lot of it's going to depend on how those go. If he's meeting a lot of those and getting a good amount of the up to salary that he could make, I think he'd be pretty content with that. My only thing is that, as we know, there's nothing guaranteed in the NFL.
No.
You could end your career in year 4, and suddenly that's that. You're done. So, I could see a period in a few years if he's playing, kind of outplaying his contract, him trying to renegotiate this with the 49ers. But at least from the 49ers' perspective, you just bought yourself 3 or 4 years of time where you don't have to worry about your quarterback essentially from a contractual standpoint.
Yeah, and that is the part that I guess that's why I'm so kind of suspicious of this deal. If I was Kaepernick, I would not have signed this because I don't trust it. You said you're in good shape from a contract perspective, but I don't necessarily know if Kaepernick is a guy worthy of that money in the long run. You know what I mean? And what I'm saying is I don't even know if he's that good of a quarterback yet. And when we see that, like, maybe his legs slow down a hair, he starts getting, I wouldn't say hurt, but beaten in the NFL over and over, he might lose some of the, not be able to capitalize on some of his best attributes. And then he has to go to being a more passing quarterback. And, you got to worry about if you're him, you got to be worried, can you be that? Because that's what you're going to need to be when you're 27, 28, or approaching 30. So that's why I'm kind of interested. I don't know, is that I felt like he could have might as well have signed a 2-year deal.
Yeah, I think he could have done. He could have gone along that route, and there probably wouldn't have been too much negative said about it. It's kind of interesting you bring up that whole, sort of you slow down with the legs and you have to rely more on the pocket and passing. I was fortunate enough, and I'm going to name drop here, but it was awesome. So I got to sit down with Steve Young a while ago, and yeah, that's exactly what he said. Is he said, Kaepernick is going to have to tie his legs up and learn to be capable and competent of delivering the ball from the pocket. His legs are his best attribute. Don't get rid of them, but don't always just rely on them. And I think that's probably a part of the reason why the 49ers were convinced to make this deal the way it was, because there are dangers with being a mobile quarterback. And let's say he does slow down and he's not delivering the ball from the pocket the way that they had hoped. Well, guess what? You don't have to tie into him for, all these years that are on the contract. So I think it's definitely why Kaepernick signed it. I think it's probably the most amount of money he's seen, and it's nice to say that you're one of the top paid quarterbacks. But from the 49ers' perspective, it's not a huge gamble either.
I think there's because I agree, is that I think that this is a remarkable deal for the team, and the GM that signed this should be given a raise. And I know that he's been the guy that, I don't know his name, but I know him and Harbaugh tend to butt heads. Yeah, this guy is a miracle worker.
Yeah, there's two guys involved. So Trent Baalke is the general manager, and then Parag Marathi is the guy who handles all the contracts and makes all the pieces work. So whatever those two guys are doing, what's great is that these two guys, this regime that's 49ers have enjoyed for this decade, they really haven't made too many contractual mistakes. So that's kind of when I was thinking about this whole deal. I was like, you know what? I don't see them messing up now. So.
Well, no, they didn't. They pulled a rabbit out of the hat. And what I wonder, and before this has got to say something about Kaepernick's confidence and maybe trying to go for the win. Maybe he's rolling the dice and saying, hey, we brought in Stevie Johnson, we drafted Ellington, we're going to have Crabtree back, most likely it looks like, and Vernon Davis at least has another year. Maybe he just thinks that they're that close that he can roll the dice on the next 2 years and then land and be set. Because if he added a Super Bowl to the resume, you really can't say much. But before, what do you guys, Joey, do you think that they're that close where that might be in his mind?
Yes, they are that close with the additions that they've made. If Hyde works out, and they could be good for more than just this upcoming year. But yes, with the additions that they've made, they are close. If that defense can play as well as they have in the past, if everybody gets healthy, they're a contender. There's no denying that they're a contender.
Aaron, how do you feel about that? Do you think that this is him saying we're just one or two additions away?
Well, I mean, they've proven that they're a Super Bowl caliber team the last couple of years, right? So, I mean, they're there, and they've made some additions this year. They've made a cap-friendly deal. They gave their quarterback some big-time money, so he's happy. They're not going into the year with that hanging over his head. So, yeah, I think that's what he's saying, and I think it was a good move by them.
Okay. Peter, tell us a little about the free agency and how that factored in maybe into Kaepernick's agreement to this. You guys brought in some names, and you had a pretty decent draft. How have you felt about the offseason?
Well, interesting way to look at it. I've kind of mentioned this, and I've read it a lot. For the 49ers, it's kind of a cold war with the Seahawks. So both teams are adding arms and going out there and trying to add weapons and surpass the other. Seahawks are on top right now, but everybody's looking at the 49ers and what they want. And I think a lot of the weapons that the 49ers brought in or drafted were just to compete with Seattle. Or just, hey, this is why they beat us last year. How do we get past that? Our secondary needed some help. We got the help. Wide receiver core was weak. We upgraded that. The running game was getting old. We reinforced that. And obviously the defensive front.
It's another quarterback who's slated to get us.
Along the same line. So it's an arms race.
How is with Navarro Bowman with the injury? How are you guys looking? How do you think that's going to impact the defense?
You can't replace a guy like that, but Michael Wilhoit, backup inside linebacker, he filled in for Patrick Willis last year for a few games when Willis was out with a groin injury, and he did a great job. And so I think right now all favorites are looking towards him being the guy to take over for Bowman. And you're playing alongside Patrick Willis, so that obviously helps out a bit. But the 49ers drafted some added bulk for the linebacker core, both to potentially replace Bowman for the first half of the season, and also maybe to alleviate Alden Smith if and when he's suspended.
Aaron, you wanted to ask Peter a couple questions about the draft, and then we'll talk about Cam Newton.
Okay. Yeah, I got a little bit of draft envy over here. I write over at drafttech.com. I covered all of our draft picks. We had 6 draft picks this year. You guys had, what was it, 12?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. Pretty amazing job, again, going back to your general manager, and hopefully we're going to get more and more like that. But there's 2 picks in your lineup that I would like to ask you about. Just so that you know, here at Carolina CatChronicles.com, we did a Panther Nation mock draft where Panther fans got to pick who they wanted to see us draft in each round. And 2 players that we were keenly interested in as a Panther Nation were who you took at 100 overall in the 3rd round, and Brandon Thomas out of our backyard in Clemson. A couple neat things about that, right? One, you can tell me where you think he fits into the long-term plans, but 2, just like Marcus Lattimore last year where you drafted out of South Carolina, kind of taking somebody and redshirting them for a year. I'm interested in your take on that philosophy as a team.
Well, 49ers have made, they love to grab players at a bargain who are going to sit out their rookie seasons, like you said with Lattimore. They did that with a number of guys this year. And, where Brandon Thomas fits in the 49ers' future plans, and this does kind of tie into the whole Kaepernick deal. Mike Iupati, he's one of the best offensive linemen in the game, and he's entering a contract year, and he's going to get paid. And I don't know if 49ers can pay him. So if you pick a guy like Thomas, who, if he wasn't injured, would be one of the top linemen in the draft, and just redshirt him, and maybe if and when Iupati walks, I think he will. You just say, all right, we've got our guy to fill in that role, and you got cheaper, you got younger, and that's one of the things that the 49ers have no problem doing, especially if they're taking a guy who's hurt and letting him sit for a year.
Yeah. And the other person I wanted to ask you about was somebody that Panther Nation was keenly interested in as well, and one of Joey's favorite players, and that's Bruce Ellington that you guys took with the pick number 106 in the 4th round. Where do you see him fitting in?
Well, he's 49ers last year, they needed speed at the receiver position. You had Anquan Bolden and Michael Crabtree. Both are big physical guys, great hands, but they're slow. And you lacked speed. So now you add a guy like Ellington, who's a blazer. He reminds me of a bigger Ace Sanders. And just a guy that can take the top off of a defense. 49ers receiving corps is pretty crowded this year, but I see him with that speed element working his way onto the roster, no problem. And he also can return kicks, and depending what the 49ers decide to do with LaMichael James, he might have a job there as well.
Stevie Johnson's no slouch on the deep ball either. So you guys just all of a sudden went from having Kaepernick being the speed on your offense to being a really well-rounded offense now. So if he can deliver the ball, and we know he has the arm strength, the question is can he make go through the progressions and bide his time to get the deep ball down there? You guys might be cooking with gasoline this year.
Well, I sure hope so. It looks like that, and we're kind of talking a little bit earlier, just saying the arms race between Seattle and San Francisco. All these picks, this is made to go up against Seattle and be better than them. So you can just see every little pick that the 49ers made during that draft. You're like, oh, that makes sense. Why? Okay, that's how they're going to beat Seattle with this guy or that guy, and it made so much sense when you kind of factor that into the decision process.
That's crazy how you guys don't even pay attention to other teams in your division.
Just Seattle.
We go 2
like,
14 this year, but we beat the Seahawks twice. That's great.
yeah. Okay. Well, look, I want to play you guys a little something that Ian Rappaport said about the Colin Kaepernick deal and how it may affect and how Cam's camp is viewing it, and then we'll get your reactions to it. And Joe, you can jump in when it's over. All right.
All right.
Monster deal in the near future. We were just talking about, is the Newton deal going to be similar to the Kaepernick contract, or are they going to maybe look at another quarterback who recently signed a big?
Well, Dan, talking to people close to Cam Newton, they certainly hope not. In fact, this Colin Kaepernick deal really scares people who know Cam Newton very well, mainly because of the structure. What they hope is that this structure does not impact future contracts. And, oh, by the way, Cam Newton is going to want more than Colin Kaepernick got on a yearly basis as well. So, Dan, here's what they are afraid of. Let's say that Colin Kaepernick has just a so-so year with the 49ers this year. Then they can come to him with a decision. Either take a reduced rate or we can cut you. And because he doesn't have much guaranteed money, they actually can do that. Talking to a source close to Cam Newton, what I was told was guaranteed me is what counts. They're worried, is this a new way the teams are dealing with quarterbacks? And by the way, just to give you a quick update on where the Panthers and Cam Newton are, there have been no talks from what I understand. They're simply waiting for the Panthers to come to them.
All right, Joe. How do you feel about those statements and Cam Newton going to the table with this as a minimum number almost?
I mean, he deserves it. He has every right to ask for it. I think, you got to look at the big picture. I hope he's looking at the big picture and thinking, he definitely deserves to get paid. There's no question of that. But does he value winning over a big payday? So we'll really get to see if he's, what he's all about. Definitely wants to get himself taken care of and get himself squared away for the rest of his life, because this could be a really big deal for him. But he needs to leave some room for the team to be able to bring in talent to surround him with, because as much as we were talking about the 49ers are in it to win it, there are huge question marks with this Carolina Panthers team. And we know as fans that this team is not where the 49ers are right now. It's not saying we are headed in that direction, but we're not there yet. So Cam needs to bear that in mind when it comes to getting this deal done.
I agree, but I wonder if that gives him even more leverage against the Carolina Panthers, because the team and the offense is so predicated around just having him here. I mean, and so if you can't get him for a deal, you got to start over again. And we don't have the guys around him like maybe San Francisco that could essentially say at some point, we don't need Kaepernick anymore, and we're going to roll the dice with somebody else. But I don't know if the Panthers can do that. Aaron, in a draft, and how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the comments that Cam Newton doesn't like this deal, he is not interested in signing like this, and does he have enough leverage on the Carolina Panthers to kind of go to just refuse something like this and maybe look for like a Jay Cutler-like deal?
Well, let's face it, it would not be in his best interest to say, oh, hey, love the structure of that deal. That's what I want, right? Because,
right.
That's not how you play poker, right? Coming from the Vegas guy here. So, I think he's playing it right by saying very little and saying that. And, of course, being the number 1 overall pick, Kaepernick being a second rounder, comparable in size and skill sets, dynamic ability, I think he's right to be asking for more. So I think he's playing it right. And I think he does. He has all the leverage. You brought up good points. He will get as much as he wants to get. Now, I agree with Joey. We're going to find out what he's made of. And I think he is competitive enough. I don't think he's going to hold the organization hostage, but we'll see.
Peter, how do you feel about people on the East Coast already saying Cam Newton's worth more money than Colin Kaepernick?
Well, it's I think the point was brought up. Cam Newton could look at this and say, hey, where did I go in the draft, and where did Kaepernick go in the draft? I've got more playing time, more experience. He sat out, for much of the first, he wasn't playing for the beginning of his career. Yeah,
I think it was like a year and a half.
Yeah, it's he got a couple snaps his rookie season and came in halfway his second, and I mean that's pretty good leverage from Newton's standpoint. And if you're talking about development and whatnot, and you can say easily that that Newton is further along. Kaepernick could come back and say, well, I've taken my team to the Super Bowl and to an NFC championship and yada yada, but at the same time, some of the consistency problems that we've seen of him are certainly the eyebrow raisers. So, it's your points are well taken, and I think that's kind of the I guess the concerns that 49ers fans out here might have is, okay, is Kaepernick really our guy? Because we hope you're right. We hope that he does live up to that contract.
And let's face it, it's the agents that are running a lot of this conversation.
Sure, certainly.
Just to point that out, and I don't know who Kaepernick's agent was, but it's Bud somebody, and it's Cam Newton's agent, and he's the same agent for Jay Cutler. And Jay Cutler signed a mega deal, like $52 million or something, or $48 million guaranteed, with the Bears. So, and that's, and you want to talk about a guy that has shown inconsistency throughout his career, it's Jay Cutler. He's shown that he can play quarterback, but he's never really done as much. I mean, look, Colin Kaepernick has done more than Jay Cutler.
Right.
So I think that here is Cam Newton. He will not take anything like this deal, and the whole concept. It's so awesome. I mean, I'm like jealous that you guys signed this thing with Kaepernick. It's really cool because you guys really have some of the. I think he's just invested in this 2 years. Now with Cam Newton, it's a completely different story. We really don't know where this organization is heading. In some ways, we have a defense, but there's so many contract questions with the Carolina Panthers. Dave Gettleman might cut. You never know what that guy's going to do at this point. So I feel that Cam Newton has to call for it. He needs 5 years and a lot of guaranteed money because we need to see where the defense is going. Joey, how do you feel about that with all the things going on? Could it be the lack of stability maybe in Carolina that would encourage him to look for something that's more stable contractually?
Yeah, I think. I would say definitely if he's going to, he doesn't know where the organization is going. I mean, I guess they have a plan in place, but that's not to say it. We don't know how far along they are in that plan, and the team is on the cusp, so he does need to capitalize right now. He should capitalize on getting his money, but at the same time, he can't handicap the team, and it's a balancing act. This is going to be. He's got a tough decision ahead of him. He can't take all the team's money, but at the same time, he wants to make sure he is. I guess when you get those big deals, it kind of inflates your ego, and I know a lot of the pro players, they have that big ego, and that's sometimes what separates them from just an okay player. And I guess you want that big deal so you can say, hey, look at me, I got all this money, but at the same time, I said earlier, you don't want to be the highest paid guy on a 4-12 team every year. How fun is that?
Yeah, you don't want to be the buster guy that gets hurt though and never got paid either. So I'd rather be nicknamed Big Money on a team that didn't win than poor Tony on a on a Super Bowl team that I didn't play for.
But we're not talking about being poor. It's not like you're talking about paying Cam $50,000 a year. You know what I mean? He's gonna make his money. There's no doubt. We just, like I said, it's gonna come down to what kind of a player he is, what kind of a person he is. Is he a team player and wants to win championships, or is he gonna be that guy that wanted to be an icon?
How do you feel about this, Aaron? And we're almost done, so because I know Peter has to go, but I have to ask him 2 more things before we leave. They're easy questions. So, how do you feel about this, Aaron?
Well, my biggest concern is Bus Cook, who was Cam Newton's agent, right? He was Brett Favre's agent, and like you said, he's Jay Cutler's agent, so he's going to go after every nickel. So I think it's going to come down to how much Cam Newton is involved. He may just say let Cook handle it, and if that's the case, we're going to be paying through the nose. But we'll see where it plays out. I just hope he's with us for the long haul, and I think he is.
I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, I can't see us going a different direction, and you're just going to have to pay up at this point. You got your first superstar, and you got to see if it works out in the long run. Okay, Aaron. Excuse me, Peter. We have 2 questions for you. First, have you heard that we're doing a fantasy football league this year? Carolina Cat Chronicles is doing a fantasy football league, and you can buy in for $20, or you could get a premium buy-in where you, in honor of D'Angelo Williams' mother, his number is 34, and she just passed away of breast cancer, and we're going to give some money to a breast cancer organization.
That's
would
awesome.
Would you be interested in at least maybe checking in or even playing in an East Coast Fantasy League?
Yeah, that's 2 things. I haven't done fantasy in a long time, but that might be a good incentive to get back into it. Plus, with it going to a good cause, that's awesome. I'm really excited you guys are doing that. That's really special.
I had to get a plug-in for CarolinaCatChronicles.com's Fantasy Football League, where we will be giving away jerseys and weekly prizes, too, with cash prizes. So we want everybody to check that out. And
hey, Peter, one of the prizes is a Kelvin Benjamin jersey. So if you win that, what are you going to do with it?
Oh, gosh, I'm going to think about way back when the 49ers were looking at him to solve their red zone woes. Hold on to that. That's one of those things that you could say, this is a neat little piece, depending on how he winds up playing.
Whatever, that mess will be on eBay. Okay, and the last question for you before we go, and we'll give everybody a chance to kind of plug their Twitter names and where they can be found at, so we can get maybe people can continue with this conversation. Have you ever Kaepernicked in public, Peter?
Oh gosh. Well, my wife's sitting here going, no. Not public. In front of somebody else? I just got married, so I do a few different things. So
I guarantee you there is a wedding photo of you Kaepernicking somewhere.
We'll take that as a yes.
I firmly believe it. This is a phenomenon. I don't know if you, Joey, and you guys have heard of this, is that people are going around doing the bicep kiss. And I saw a whole basketball team in like the crowd do it or something.
So is this new planking?
Yeah, this is their version. This is West Coast planking. It's the San Francisco version. It's the liberal version of planking. Okay. Well, go ahead, Peter, and tell them how they can follow you, because this is our million hit guy right here. Where are you? Are you what, at like 1.5 by now?
Yeah, it's about 1. I don't know. I think 1.7.
Holy,
look at that! Oh Lord!
I know. Play the drum. That's awesome. 1.7 views.
The NFL draft, that was, I was working hard, but that certainly raised numbers. I mean, I got a lot of reads from being the 49ers NFL draft correspondent for Bleacher Report, so that was awesome.
Well, man, tell them how they can follow you and find you on Bleacher Report, and we'll make it 1.710.
Yeah, you go check out, go look for Peter Panacy. It's spelled exactly how it sounds. Go look for my profile on Bleacher Report. A bunch of 49ers stuff on there, kind of leading up to the preseason. And then also look for me on Twitter, at Peter McShots. That's my Twitter handle. And be sure to follow me. Try to post as much stuff as I can and keep everybody up to date as often as I can.
Awesome. Aaron, get in there and tell them how they can find you on Twitter and anything you want to plug.
Well, hey, Peter, I just followed you right now on Twitter, so there you
Awesome.
go. All right.
I'll follow you back when you go.
Right on. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Panthers Drafter, and I am the draft analyst for drafttech.com. Go out there, check us out. That's a great resource for a lot of different things, everything having to do with the draft. We are going to have a new mock draft coming out here in the near term for the next go-around. And doing a lot of writing with the guys, my good buddies here at Cat Chronicles, enjoying what I'm doing here. So follow me on Twitter and keep the conversation going. And I'm looking forward to this fantasy draft, too. Awesome.
Joe, get in there and plug yourself.
All right, I'm Joe Riolano. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Riolano. Often retweeting what Tony is putting out there. Occasionally, I'll put something out by other sites as well. But yeah, at Joe Riolano, and let's keep building Panther Nation. Peter, I want to thank you for coming on the show, man. You're always one of the people that we love to have on this show. You do a great job when you come on. We're really grateful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's always a pleasure coming on with you guys. You guys are great. You're passionate, and it's a lot of fun, I'll tell you. I really enjoy it every time.
Awesome. Well, everybody, check us out, CarolinaCatChronicles.com. You can follow us on Twitter at cat_chronicles, and be sure to only Kaepernick when you're on the West Coast.
Didn't know me 91, bet they know me now. I'm the young Harlem nigga with the goldies.